Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Mikey, Stafford here. It's a new season. The sun is shining on this January afternoon, but the filthiest month of weather of the year is coming around, so obviously we know we're coming into the busiest period of the GAA calendar with the most significant and competitive games. It's Allianz League time, everybody. I'm joined by Pat Spillane, Rory O'Neill and Ciaran Whelan. How is everybody doing today?
Good,
Great. Mikey. Not about it.
Good stuff. Pat, I take it Division 4 is where your head is at this year. You'll be following every Sligo game avidly.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's nice to have somebody involved. So young Pat, he joined the Sligo panel 3 weeks ago. He loves it so far. His dream was to play inter-county football. Sligo giving him that opportunity. He loves, it's a young team, very young team, great management team, Tony McEntee and co. So look, it's something to look forward to. I won't be in Wexford. I'll stay clear of him for a couple of weeks. Maybe I'll sneak into some game, but I won't be in Wexford Park on Sunday, I suppose. I'm working Sunday night, so I hope I don't have to say anything at all about it.
You were spotted in Parnell Park there over the winter, Pat, yeah?
I was. Look, I enjoyed the Dublin County Championship, even though in fairness, the Dublin County Final threw up one of the worst games of the year, the Dublin County Final, the Mayo County Final, the Donegal County Final, the Kerry semi-final. But that's another thing. So I'm looking forward to the league. I mean, years ago, Ciaran, as you know, the league was a bit of a warm-up for the half-strength teams, blowing out Dirty Diesel, trying out young fellas. But now, they're all back training officially since the 8th of December. They were all back in individual programs before then. A lot of the inter-county sides were back illegally training long before the 8th of December. The provincial championships, the McGrath Cup, and them have been very enjoyable. Lovely football, almost full-strength teams. And I can't wait for the league to get going because really it's going to be full-strength teams, flying fit, close to Championship Forum, and I can't wait. Dubs and Crow Park next Saturday, full house in Newbridge. And the one I'm looking forward to, Ciaran, and I know you're going to be down there. I mean, round 2, Kerry, Dublin and Tralee, under lights, packed house, great atmosphere. The Dubs filling Tralee and Killarney for the weekend. So much to look forward to.
More enticing than I'd leave off Wexford Park in January, all right, Pat. It's nowhere for a man without Arctic expedition gear on him.
Right.
Just slightly more on Pat Jr. I suppose it's not unusual for talented Kerry native footballers to go elsewhere. It's there's a long history of it.
Well, actually, it's unusual enough, because there's actually 4 Kerry fellas operating outside of Kerry this year. Joe Grimes from Listowel has just started centre field for Cork, so he's on the Cork panel. Conor Cox obviously has made a huge impact with Roscommon. And the third player is Conor Jordan from Austin Sachs, who plays centre half back with Clare. And Pat is now the 4th. So look, the dream of any young lad is to play inter-county football. He never played inter-county football in Kerry. Now he's got that opportunity. And his mother is from Sligo, and we said this year, she played camogie. His uncle played.
There's no need to roll your eyes, Pat.
Yeah, his uncle played hurling underage. But we were just saying, did he achieve anything? Were he really involved in the GAA? And until his mother piped up the other day, herself and her 2 sisters won the Connacht title in ballad singing representing Sligo. So there's a Connacht medal already in the house. and his auntie Helena won an All-Ireland medal in solo singing and score representing Carrow GAA Club, Sligo and Connacht. So no pressure, Pat. There's a provincial medal in the house.
Well, you know what? It brings us on to the next topic before we get into our league preview, which obviously is the championship restructure plan, which looks like the Green proposal is, well, we know the Green proposal is going to Congress and looks set to pass. It's just interesting you mentioned the prospect of someone winning a provincial medal from Sligo. Rory, the unintended consequences here, because that's one of our buzzwords on this podcast, is this Green proposal, which I'm not going to go through now because, Christ, we want to keep people with us. But most people listening to this podcast are fairly familiar. The upshot of it is the provincial championships stand out like a sore thumb in the middle of this very league-heavy championship structure that's going to take about 18 games to win. And if you're in Division 1, if you're Dublin, you actually don't have to give a damn about the Leinster Championship anymore. You don't, like, you probably want to win it, but you're probably not good. You mightn't play a full strength team. Same thing goes for probably Mayo, maybe Galway or Roscommon by next year. Who knows? So I heard Tom Parsons on Colin Parkinson's podcast the other day, and he kind of said this could be one of the good kind of outcomes from this, is that the big counties give less of a damn about the provincial championships, and the little guy might get to win a trophy.
It's true. Like, I mean, I suppose the bigger counties could possibly look at targeting a block of training during the provincial championships once they have their Sam Maguire place sealed via their league positioning. So that is one aspect of it. But I suppose they have incentivized winning the provincial championships, if I'm not mistaken, with a seeding. Isn't that correct, Pat?
That's correct. There? Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So there's still an incentive there. I mean, look, the proposal that they came up with, it was a bit like, as Gay Byrne used to say, you know, one for everyone in the audience. It was, you know, you'll have a bit of this and we'll have a bit of that. And all they effectively did was they've taken the qualifiers and replaced it with a round robin, 4 groups of 4. That's pretty much it. That's all. That's the only change. Well, look, it's change. I think the biggest issue is, and like you'd see this quite regularly, I see Martin Breheny, like no change was ever good for some people, you know, like everything that's mooted, there's a problem with. And I think that's ultimately the circle you're trying to square with any championship format. Like no matter what you do, people are going to have a problem with it in some way, shape or fashion. I think the biggest issue for this, for me, was, I mean, this is a done deal. This is going to get 80, 90%. Like this will sail through. I think the hilarious thing is that Congress very often gets accused of being sort of a conservative, very, very reserved conservative and slow for change. In fact, I'd actually argue the opposite. Congress can be quite radical when it's given the license to do so. And if there's good debate and if there's good information in advance of it, and it has shown itself to be dynamic in the past. The problem is the people that I suppose that were appointed to the committee. And look, there's a reason that the conservative, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being conservative, but most of the people that were appointed to oversee this are very conservative, and they didn't want a huge amount of change. They just wanted a little tweak that'll keep everyone happy. This is what we have. I think, look, let's see what happens over the next couple of years. I think, as Mick Foley said, it's the beginning of the end of the provincial championships, and that's probably going to be a stake that will take a couple of inches to drive through before we finally see the death of it.
Yeah, it does seem, perhaps, a lot of people wondering why the GPA did a U-turn and turned their back basically on Proposal B, which, you know, the red proposal was by another name with slight tweaks to the league, bringing in 1A and 1B, 2A, 2B. People are wondering why the GPA, their membership, threw their lot in with Green. And one reason is change is better than the status quo. And the second one, perhaps players and the GPA are craftier than we think, and maybe they've seen that, you know what, this is going to lead to the death of the provincial champions before long, because they are, like, it just almost seems like an interlude in the middle of the championship now.
Yeah, I think so, Mike. I think if you look back at Proposal B, which I have to say I kind of preferred, that was really putting the stake into the provincial championships. And I think
bit radical, though. Bit radical,
yeah,
Whelan.
It was radical, but that's the point, Rory. There had to be middle ground, possibly. And I think everybody realises that the repetitive fixtures and going to the same games, everything, that's worn thin, that's become stale, that's become boring. You know, going out in early May and seeing, you know, Kerry, Tank, Limerick or Waterford, there's absolutely no benefit to the weaker counties. You have higher turnover of players in the weaker counties and they're not progressing. So that I think right across the GPA, they knew that there had to be some sort of change. We all accepted that had to be some sort of change. And Rory, you're right. There's no perfect solution. There's no silver bullet here that's going to have the outcome. We have to kind of try something. I'm not a huge fan of it, to be honest with you. Even I can see loads of flaws with it. Even 3 teams qualifying for
a lot of dead.
Very flabby.
It's going to lead to a lot of dead rubber games and a lot of flatness probably at a time of year when we really want to promote our games. But maybe, just maybe, it's the first step in a process to move forward. And I think what's going to be very interesting this year is the trial with the Tailteann Cup, because, you know, we're moving to a situation now where the next few weeks are extremely exciting from a footballing perspective in terms of Division 2, compared with Division 3, and those teams fighting for their lives to try and get kind of Sam Maguire status. And I think there's been a lot of talk in the background about the Tailteann Cup and the benefits for the weaker teams. We'll see a little bit of proof in the pudding this year in that we're going to have that competition. And I think we'll learn a hell of a lot from that, because it's very easy for people to talk about promoting it, giving it the same profile, giving it the All-Stars, all this sort of stuff. Will that actually happen? And will it be diluted? Like, look at this weekend alone. You know, the whole focus probably is on, you know, the 4 Division 1 games, but the Division 2 and Division 3 games are actually probably more important to those counties respectively going forward this year. So it's, I think, listen, I welcome change. I'm not a big fan of the Green proposal. It was kind of rushed through. We all know from the past that, you know, the provincial councils was being a major stumbling block in getting some change. So yeah, maybe it's a fair point, Mikey, that the GPA have seen this as maybe the first step towards real change, but it definitely has its flaws, as will any change. We accept that, you know.
Yeah, Pat. I don't think anybody was too enamored with the Super 8s. On paper, it seemed like a good idea, but in reality, we ended up with dead rubber games after 2 rounds.
Look, you're right, Mikey. I mean, look, I agree with, first of all, what Rory says. I mean, the GAA are always often accused of being conservative and slow to change, and they most certainly are. But the GAA are still the number 1 sporting organisation in this country for a very simple reason, that they do eventually change. There might be slow at times, but they do accept and recognise change, and they do change. And when it comes to the championship format, down through the years, they first of all started with the back door. Unfortunately, the back door, in theory, was a great idea. It gave supposedly the weaker counties a second chance. What happened was the big gun who got beaten once came around the back door and was stronger. And so at the end of the day, the cream still came to the top. The Super 8s, in theory, was a great idea. More high-profile games, more money, but it was underwhelming. It wasn't a success. This, as Ciaran said, is not the silver bullet. Far from it. It will need a lot of tweaking, but at least it's an acceptance that the championship structure, at presently structured, is wrong. So I welcome the fact that there's a pathway still for provincial finalists to get through. I welcome the fact that there's now a pathway for league placing. So after the 8 provincial finalists, the next 8 in league standings get in. The Tailteann Cup is a great initiative. And remember, in 2024, the winners of the Tailteann Cup will be entitled to be in the last 16 of the championship. And the last point I want to say why it means more championship games, because in theory, up to now, we talk about the ratio of training to games, 13 training sessions to every game. Now, prior to 2018, there was 60 championship games. During the Super 8, there was 68 championship games. And now, there will be, under this format, there will be 99 championship games. So it means more games. And of course, all the stakeholders on board. My big problem is that, and I see a problem with their fixtures calendar at the moment. And this proposal is still the same. They are packing and squeezing everything into a tight frame. So I was just looking at this. I mean, under the proposal, the league starts the last weekend of January. They play 7 of the next 9 league matches, right? 7 of the 9 weekends are league matches. The league final, once the league final is played, the championship starts the week after the league final. No, the week after the league final starts. The week after the league final. Then, so the other thing is the provincial championship then is played 5 weekends on the trot. And then you go into the All-Ireland Championship with the qualifiers and all that, and they play 7 weekends in a row. They're free for 1 weekend, semi-final, final. So that it is huge. You talk about health and safety and player welfare. That is a crazy schedule. The other problem is,
that doesn't allow for, you know, COVID breaking out in Tyrone then either, Pat.
Yes, well, we won't go there now. It will be nice this year. We're starting with a
new year, Rory, new year.
but then you talk about Division 2 and Division 3 and the importance in that now of who can get into the All-Ireland Championship or who might be into the Tailteann Cup. And therein is a problem, because in hurling, there are 5 tiers in the hurling championship. 5 tiers. In the proposal in the football championship, you now have 2 tiers, 16 and 16. But I will argue that there should be more than 2 tiers in football, because the point, say Cork, say Galway, say Meath, even Roscommon, say they're relegated from Division 2. They don't get to their provincial finals. They're relegated from Division 2. Are you telling me that is a fair and equitable Tailteann Cup then when Cork and Meath are playing Leitrim's and the Longfords? That's not fair. That's not a level playing field. And the other problem I see with the Tailteann Cup, and I think was Ciaran alluded to, outside the fact that dead rubbers, an awful lot of those teams like two problems I see with it. Like for weaker teams to improve, they have to play teams of a higher standard, right? There's a strong possibility that that core of weaker teams will only be ever playing against weaker teams. And they could be playing them 3 times a year. And the point I'm trying to say is when weaker teams play weaker teams, a Division 4 team plays a Division 4 team in the provincial chapter, whatever like that, standards will never improve. So look, it's a start. It'll need a lot of tweaking, but I welcome it.
Okay. Mikey, can I just come back to one thing
Pat
said there? Just in relation to the season, and I think it's an interesting point that like there's 7 games I think across the 9 weeks, and then this year you're straight into championship. You don't have that gap where normally would have had, and teams would have done a block of training and stuff like that. And listen, I fully accept, players want games, but I have to say, from my own perspective, when you're playing, sometimes you're like a little bit of a breather as well. You know what I mean? I think there's a balance in there somewhere that players, the expectation we're putting on these amateur players to perform every week and the requirements now on them over the short period.
It's a good point, actually.
Is massive.
Yeah.
And I know
crazy.
You welcome that weekend off where you were just out of that mental space and you could relax and you could recoup and you could recover. And I think looking at the season, and they brought forward obviously the All-Ireland finals to July. And I know, Rory, we spoke about this, but certainly within Dublin, there's no intention to start the championships until September. Yeah. So you're gonna have a lot of students back on.
You saw the message from the county board, Whelan.
Yeah.
They're taking a break in August.
But Rory, you're going to have a lot of students even on J1s this year back travelling again, and clubs will be decimated. There'll be kids that want to travel, that are entitled to travel, that you want to see travelling. They've been restricted the last couple of years, and I think we're probably going to end up left with a vacuum that our championships are essentially going to end in July, and you probably will not see county championships commence until September, mid-September.
You're right.
So I think there's an argument there that we may have shrunk it too much, and you're putting a lot of pressure on individual players to play week in, week out.
You're right, Ciaran. I mean, I think
we cleared out August so everyone can go on holidays. I mean, it
is bonkers. You're right. I mean, it's now going to be either a feast or a famine. So what you're talking about with our elite young athletes, our prized possessions, the players who must be looked after, they are now being flogged to death. So you take the example. I mean, you know of the crazy situation we've seen in the last couple of weeks where players played 2 matches the one day, players played, but let's say take David Clifford and co, and he's no different, the Sigerson boys. So they will play next Sunday in Newbridge. They will play probably Tuesday in the Sigerson quarter-final, and they play the following Saturday night in Tralee. That's 3 big matches in 7 days. It is absolutely
championship
crazy.
Game,
Championship game. It's absolutely crazy. And we talk about, and I've said it before, we are taking our high-profile games, our inter-county action, we are taking them off the shop window on the last weekend in July, and we're saying, lads, it's club from then on. But what's going to happen, as you pointed out, is July and August is going to be holiday time, and September will start the club. And remember what September was before. September was the month when we had the All-Ireland final. September was the month when the other sports were just starting their season. September was the month when youngsters came back to school. And September was the month where we had all the profile on our national games. Now it's all gone. It's bonkers.
Yeah, I don't think personally. I don't think the profile thing is a huge issue because I don't think the GAA's place in the sporting furniture of Ireland isn't
I disagree with you, Mikey, and I'll tell you why. Club games are very important, but as you know yourself, look, I've been watching club
of interest to 2 parishes.
They're of interest to 2 parishes, a minor interest in a little bit of interest within the rest of the county, and no interest nationally. That's number 1. Number 2, with all due respects, they don't have the profile of intercounty, and with all due respects, the standard of club is much lower than that of county. So we're putting a product out for 6 months that the general public aren't really interested in, and that's wrong.
I think, Mikey, on that, like we have to recognise that the club was getting squeezed out, and a 9-month inter-county window was not ideal.
But we've gone way too much the other way now.
But I think it's counterproductive if you're going to have a vacuum for 2 months where it's not benefiting anybody. So it's a difficult one again. It's very like the championship structures. There's no quick win here. It's striking that balance.
It can be tweaked though. They can obviously look at it and say mid-August is probably happier landing spot for the two All-Ireland finals.
But I remember put out a proposal on the radio when I was interviewed by Marty Morrissey after the Kerry County final, and I wrote about it subsequently in the Sunday World. I said, right, how do we counteract that? And it was something my colleague in the Sunday World, Sean McGoldrick, has been talking about. And he was saying, right, let's split the season. Right, let's split the season to ensure that there's high-profile games all the year round. So next year, for the first 6 months, you have club hurling, inter-county football. For the second 6 months, you have club football, inter-county hurling. And the following year, you flip it. And that means you have inter-county, either hurling or football,
nearly all year round,
and club all year round. I think it's the ideal scenario. And anyone that has ever spoken to me about it, I think it's a damn good idea.
There's about 6 or 7 counties where that won't work particularly well. But
well, no matter what system you're going to bring in, you're not going to. I mean, the Lockmore Castellani's, so the lads will have a problem playing club football and playing inter-county hurling, but that's going to happen anyway. It's happening at the moment.
It's happening at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, I'm glad we're getting off to the new season on a very optimistic footing here. So we might as well get on and preview the Allianz Football League.
Thank God it's back.
Now that we've decided everything's shit, we'll get on and preview the Allianz Football League. As is our wont on this show, I start with Division 2 because I always think it's the most interesting.
Yeah.
I think, Division 1 is for performance, Division 2 is for winning.
How about letting Rory sing Cox praises first?
Yeah,
we'll try to chop him down after.
Yeah. It's very interesting. It's very interesting the two teams that came down, Roscommon and Meath. Roscommon are without their Pádraig Pearse's contingent. Meath have a manager that the executive didn't want and had to be voted back in. Offaly and Clare would be favourites to go down, but they've got very wily managers. Galway haven't performed yet under Pádraig Joyce, it has to be said. They've, it's been an unusual 2 years for them, but they haven't performed. Down are out without their Kilcoo bunch. Cork are without a fair number of... It's the division most upset by the club championship for a week at least. Bars, obviously, are still going, so Cork. Derry are shooting up through the divisions, doing a Swansea City on it. So, Ciaran, it is, as always, a very intriguing division, which obviously has extra jeopardy on it this year, because if you go down, barring a provincial title, you are in the Tailteann Cup for the summer.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, Mikey, and you've kind of nailed it there. You've a cohort of teams that are all kind of fighting for their lives, and then you probably have one or two that want to step up to that top level as well and be competing with the big teams. And Galway, for example, are a perfect example of that. Lost out to Monaghan last year in the relegation playoff, and like Pádraig Joyce said, he's had a tough 2 years down there, and that I think personally, I think they kind of got caught with what way they wanted to play the game, and I think they came in with a philosophy of playing front foot football, and they're great forwards, but they got badly exposed playing that game against the top teams. And you probably find a large majority of the teams below, the Mayos, the Kerrys, the Dublin, they're all underpinned by some sort of solid defensive structure. So I think Galway have to improve. They have to get better, and they have to find a solid structure. And you would expect that they have good enough forwards to be able to be thereabouts, trying to get back up. Like, I think when you look at the other end of the table, joining them, I think Derry is one for me that, I was very impressed with them last year against Donegal. They really rattled Donegal, and they came into that game as strong underdogs, and they've been progressing. They're on an upward curve. They've a lot of good young players, the likes of Conor Glass in the middle, who's brilliant in the recent club championship. Kieran McFall what's his second name? The centre back, he played centre back in the Glen. He was brilliant. Regularly playing.
Henry Downey's son is there as well.
Yeah, so
and Shane McGuigan.
I think themselves and Galway probably, to me, I would think would be two teams competing at the top. In the middle you have you've Meath, maybe have plateaued under Andy McEntee. They'll take something from last year's Leinster final. You've Cork. I thought Keith Ricken done a very honest interview with GA.ie this week. He spoke about the physical development of the players and the conditioning of the players, and he made reference to players no continuity in that regard over the last few years, even though they're good people in, and you got a sense that he feels they've a long road to travel. And I would think Cork are probably just looking to hold their Division 2 status, I'd say, is possibly their objective. And then you're going to have Clare and Offaly. Offaly are going to be fighting for their lives, up from Division 3. great under-20 campaign. You know, that game against Clare this weekend down in Clare, you know, they would certainly pinpoint that one. As much as Clare have been brilliant in Division 2, they would see that as a potential opportunity. So there's going to be, the results will probably jump up and down in that division. But for me, I think, you know, Derry Galway be expecting to come up, and, you know, and if Down don't get any momentum, they could be in a dogfight possibly with, you know, Offaly at the bottom, and it'd be interesting to see can Clare hold that momentum. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating, to be honest.
Yeah, it's looking at the potential fall guys, Pat, because that in a way that's almost the more interesting end of it. Like, it's great to get into Division 1, but we know, you know, the experiences of Roscommon and a few more, they kind of do the yo-yo thing. It's avoiding Division 3 is kind of where you're really looking at, and I suppose people will be looking at Offaly, as Whelan mentioned, Clare, but to me, Down, especially without the Kilcoo lads, look, I wouldn't be putting any money on Down being in Division 2 next year. No offence to...
Yeah, I would agree with you. This is, lads, this is the toughest of the 4 divisions. This is the most competitive. And like you said, there's so much to play for, but more importantly, there's so much to lose. So, I mean, you will invariably have at least one big gun, maybe a recent provincial winner from the last 4 or 5 years could potentially be playing in the Talton Cup next year or this year and not playing for the Sam Maguire. The standout team, Galway, and I've watched them in their 2 FBD games so far, and I think they're a shoo-in to get promoted. I really do. They have Cian O'Neill. Thought they were tightened defensively. They've improved defensively. The Kellys are very impressive. Shane Walsh. Comer is back to full fitness. Matthew Tierney is playing well at midfield. I thought they've looked very good so far in the first 2 games. So Galway, to me, are the favourites. Cork, I'm interested in Cork because, in fairness to Keith Ricken, look, he's delivered an All-Ireland under 20 title to Cork. Comes across as a very impressive man. Very much into the holistic development of players, talks very well. But you know what? I was just thinking, if Jack O'Connor came out with the spiel that Keith came out with during the week, I said, oh, jeez, because he talked about Kerry and Cork after last Sunday, and Cork were dire last Saturday in the McGrath Cup. They were absolutely dire. They were, if at all possible, they were nearly worse than the Munster final performance, if that was possible.
He's getting his licks in early this year.
Yeah, they were really bad. But I mean, his analogies were very interesting. He talked about Jack O'Connor having an orchestra, and all he needs is over the next 6 months is just to get them just a little bit of tweaking to that orchestra. He said in relation, I paraphrase him, but in relation to his team, they're not really, they can't play the instruments, so they're going to have to learn them to play their musical instruments again. That's a long road down the way. And he talked about a forest for timber, for good timber to develop, you have to leave the young trees a long time to develop. So by this man, in fairness to him, he's not setting high standards. He's kicking the can down the road and says...
He's setting pretty high standards in metaphors, though, Jesus.
Yes, he is. And he says, Cork supporters, be patient, we're building. And look, they have great young talent. They really have good young talent. No doubt about it. And it will be a long term. But I look at their league. They have 4 away games in the league. Tough schedule. The vital game is this weekend against Roscommon, because even though Roscommon are a tough nut at home, as you say, they have the Padraig Pearce's boys involved in the club championship, and they have the Murtas involved in the All-Ireland intermediate semi-final. So this is a vital game. So it's a big year for Cork, because the one thing about it, the chances of them beating Kerry in a Munster semi-final and getting the provincial final are slim. So I say down Cork, Clare, Offaly, any one of the 4 for relegation, and take the other 3 teams as a possibility. I like Derry. I think they're a coming team. Derry meet at the second promotion spot.
Okay, Rory, how do you see it going then?
Yeah,
who's up, who's down?
I wouldn't actually disagree with a huge amount from Pat in terms of where Cork are. I think their ambitions anyway this year will be probably to stay in the division. I do think
Rickens is a long-term appointment. Is he? This is a man who kind of builds a structure.
They only gave him 2 years, so it's not really a long-term appointment. But look, as he said himself.
But are his strengths not in kind of building...
Rory, is that not the problem, Rory, that Cork have had significant turnover in management over the last 10 years? And, it seems to be...
There's a lot of problems. Firstly, look, the biggest problem is the best players that come out of underage every year invariably go play hurling. So that's your first issue. Your second issue then is you have had a lot of turnover of players and you've had a lot of turnover of management. But like, I do think he will build a better culture. I think a lot of the metaphors that he does come up with, I often wonder, is that a bit of shtick? I get it. I get a very good sense that what he says internally is very different to what he says outside. I don't think he's as we're all holy Joes and life is a journey. I think it's a very different.
You think there's fewer bumper sticker phrases in the dressing room?
100%. I mean, look at last Sunday. Pat referenced last Sunday, for instance, in the McGrath Cup final, which was an interesting one, right? Now, I watched it there. And like, the interesting thing for me was, Cork were dreadful. They were dreadful. They lost the first half 2-9 to 5 points, right? Now, they only lost the game itself. Well, they only lost the game. I think they lost by 12 in the end. But they lost the second half 8-6. Now, that would suggest to me. Now, I know.
I'm waiting.
I know. But what it would suggest to me, Pat, is obviously what he said at halftime must have had some.
That's hope in the world. The game was over.
Well, look,
Kerry got bored.
Kerry got bored.
Well, Kerry didn't get that bored given the team they put out. Now, it was a very, very strong team they've named from the start. Look, Kerry are going to and measuring Cork against Kerry is probably an unfair example. I think, in fairness, the analogy or the metaphor he used, while probably a little flowery for my liking, certainly isn't inaccurate then at the same time. And I think they'll be doing.
Will they stay in Division 2?
I think just about. They might get the 3 wins to just keep their heads.
And who'll go up and who'll go down? For
me, I think I would agree. I think Galway and I think Derry are in a good position. They don't have any outside distractions. I think Anthony Tohill's young lad is back as well. Now, I don't know whether or not he's committed to intercounty football or whether or not he'll make the transition back.
He played in the McKenna Cup.
Right, so there you go. And apparently a very good player as well. So they've had and obviously it'd be Gallagher's second or third year in charge. So, look, I think Derry and Galway to go up. And then, as Pat said, it'll be 2 from 4. Cork down, Offaly or Clare to be relegated.
And how are you seeing it, Wheelo, then? Quickly, who do you see going up and down?
Yeah, similar as I said. I think Galway have to go back up. From Joyce's perspective, they have to make a statement for me. And as I said, it'd be interesting to see if Derry continue on an upward curve. I think it's going to be a challenge for Offaly. It's going to be a tough campaign for them. And then if Down are missing some of the Kilcoo lads, and if McCartan can't get the best lads on the field, they could find themselves in a dogfight near the end.
Yeah, for posterity and for the record, I'm also going to say Derry are going to go up with Galway. And I'm sorry to Aidan O'Rourke, my erstwhile columnist and a fine analyst, and I'm sure fine coaches of Down footballers, but I can't see them staying up. But if Kilcoo win on Sunday or at the weekend, I think they're toast. And then Offaly as well. So sorry to Tomás O'Shea. So just being nasty to former colleagues here. Right, we'll look at Division 1, which doesn't have the same jeopardy. It's more must perform rather than must win, but it is where the best teams in the country play. It is the matches we're going to see on the television, and that makes perfect sense. And there are still lots and lots of interesting storylines. We'll start with last year's beaten All-Ireland finalists, because they're always providing us with storylines. Mayo, see Jason Doherty is back in. And Pat, I don't know, I know, Pat, you do tend to watch, if there's 2 flies crawling up a window and it's televised on Sky Sports, you'll be watching it. I don't know how into streaming you are. I'm wondering.
I have watched all the Connacht FBD games on streaming. I've watched 1 or 2 McKenna Cup. Did
you watch any Sigerson?
I've watched and they're hard. I watched last night.
Right. Well, here, this is my point though.
I watched UUJ playing MTU Cork last night. It was difficult watching. It was a difficult watch.
Right. I've one that was a lovely watch, which was in the Dome. And it was UL and Letterkenny, and it came a few days after Mayo played Galway, and it was if they were playing different sports. The Mayo Galway game was dross, and the Letterkenny UL game was end to end, fast,
like when you think
entertaining.
About it, when you think about it in that game, and I watched it all. Letterkenny got off the flying start, got a great lead. David Clifford played somewhere between second and third gear. He certainly didn't hit third gear. And I think off the top of my head, he scored 2 goals in 7 points.
Something like that, yeah.
And if anyone gets a look at it, he was a 1-on-1 one time with the goalie. And I just thought, this was just brilliant. He just gave him the eyes, gave him the slightest dip of the shoulder, as if he was going to kick with the left. Just just nonchalantly put it into right. It was a lovely game of football. Actually, you know, while we were on this is my pet hate from last year. Remember from last year's league, there are 3 finals outstanding. We decided, the J in their wisdom decided to share 3 titles, Division 1, 2, and 4. And I was just thinking, I don't know, do the captains of those respective counties get the cup for 6 months each? Was there a presentation? But why not? All those finalists are playing each other over the coming weeks. Kerry are playing Dublin. Why not award last year's trophy to the winners of that game?
Yeah.
Kildare, bang goes that theory, is it? Yes, sorry. Kildare are playing Mayo, and they're now in Division 1.
Yeah.
And the Division 4 final is between Louth and Antrim, who are Division 3 this year.
Yeah.
It's just a suggestion. But actually, just a quick thing on Division 1, and there's no doubt about it. I looked at, obviously, the best teams are in it. 7 of the provincial finalists from last year are in Division 1. Cork are the exception. They're gone. Armagh's in. But you know, and it's the top teams. It's the top teams. But I was just intrigued about the league record of those top teams. And they don't make pretty. Yes, Kerry are miles ahead, Dublin are second, and Mayo are third. The next in line are Tyrone with 2. 3 counties have 1, Armagh, Monaghan, and Donegal. And Kildare have no league title. Isn't that amazing? And the other thing, just while you're on it, like I'm saying, I don't know who's going to win it. But Tyrone, say Tyrone went hell for leather for the league. They get into the league final, but they have the short straw. Because why? They play 2 weeks after that in the Ulster Championship. Maybe it's 1 week. I'm not too sure. It's 1 or 2 weeks. Whereas the likes of Kerry and Cork, once they complete the league, they have 5 weeks of a break.
Yeah. Well, that's the... we could get back to that any number of times. That disparity, we've talked enough about that already today. But Rory, we do tend to almost forget who wins Division 1 at times, as we say. It is kind of more, it's more kind of form lines and such that we're looking for. And you're often interested in how the teams coming up are. I started with Mayo. James Horn used 36 players in the league last year. You imagine he has a slightly more settled team in mind this year. But Jason Doherty coming back is huge for Mayo, because the one position that everybody agrees they need is another scoring forward. Mayo always need a scoring forward.
Yeah. They have a few pluses. I think there's a few pluses for Mayo. I think the Oisin Mullen situation is fantastic. Massive boon. A really big boost to them. Killian O'Connor, I think from what we hear, will be ready to go maybe round 3, round 4, which is another boost. And Jason Doherty's back in the mix. They'll promote 1 or 2 up. Ryan O'Donoghue will settle in a little bit better. Obviously, last year was only his first year really established, playing at senior level and being a sort of a leader up there. So I think Mayo will be in okay shape. The worry, I suppose, is they have no home matches. Now, I don't know. Is that really a big deal? I'm not so sure. Even if it is it a big deal with Mayo? They have a terrible record in McHale Park anyway. Maybe it's not.
And enthusiastic fans will travel.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a big deal, but, look, I suppose they do call it home advantage for a reason. Maybe it's not such a big deal. I could see, I think Mayo will be fine. I think they'll probably stutter and splutter their way around, try and find a few players, win maybe 2 or 3 games, lose 2 or 3. I'd say at this stage now, the main focus for James Horn is Galway in the championship.
Yeah. Wheelo, if things don't go right for Kildare, they can just put the backroom team out in the pitch and they probably win a couple of games. There's a lot of optimism around Kildare off the back of a new backroom team, and it is absolutely star-studded. They've added in Paul Galvin for good measure as a forwards coach because Johnny Doyle is also there. I don't know. It's stacked as a backroom team. And Dermot Early. So, but they're still working off the same bunch of players. I don't mean to be negative, but I kind of wonder, sometimes the new manager bump can be exaggerated, but when the new manager brings in, I don't know how many All-Stars are going to be sitting on the subs bench beside him, but it does tend to give people optimism. Do you think there's grounds for it?
Yeah, I think there is, Mikey. I think this is dream team stuff, from a manager perspective, and I think Glenn Ryan has wanted the job for a good few years, and I'd say he was waiting for the right time. And to have Anthony there, great experience with Bowden, Johnny Doyle, who's done great work at minors and development work in Kildare, a lot of the younger players. Then you bring Paul Galvin back into the equation. Like, it really is dream team stuff from a management perspective. And I would think, Kildare have probably been, they're a nice team, I suppose. And I think he'd be trying to instill, the belief of 1998 into that group. I think even if you go back to that early 90s, it was a trend there where, Dublin in the early 90s played Kildare, beat them quite comfortably, and there was a few big dust-ups in Croke Park, and Dublin probably came out on top of them as well, and they invested a lot of energy, and Glenn Ryan was probably to the forefront of instilling that bit of belief and that bit of hardness, that bit of nastiness that you might need, and physicality to probably take on the Dubs. And so I think it mightn't happen overnight. It might take some time. But I think, Jack O'Connor done recent work. He got promoted there last year. And I think they'll just try and build on that. And I think, like, if you look at the Kildare team that has come to Croke Park in recent years, they've come a beaten docket. They've come with fear of Dublin. They're beaten before they arrive. And I think it's changing that mindset from a Kildare perspective. And even last year, they were very kind of conservative. They, Daniel Flynn's goal, they got a run at Dublin at one particular point, but were quite conservative in their approach. And Dublin are not that invincible team maybe that they were in the past, and they'll smell that. So I think naturally you're going to see a bounce in Kildare, and they will be looking to be Dublin's main competitors in Leinster and take over that mantle from Meath. And I think, listen, they couldn't ask for a better management team, so you've got to expect that they're going to put a very organised structure in place, and they'll get the lads playing for them. Yeah,
Tyrone are an interesting case, Pat, because they're not. They have never really been guaranteed their Division 1 status, or maybe not a team. Maybe for the scheduling issues you just raised, and the emphasis on the Ulster Championship, not always perhaps their number one priority. But they're All Ireland champions. They're going to come in with a bit of a swagger, but they're also going to come in with a few less weeks training than others. They're probably not a whole lot less.
Yeah. Well, a quick run through Tyrone. Yeah, their last back training because they were on holidays in Florida. Lots of the players. They've lost 5 panel members, which is, Tiernan McCann, Matt Bradley.
A lot of lads who saw game time last year.
Yeah, Hugh Pat McGeary, Michael Cassidy. Ronan O'Neill. That's 5 good panel. So there's 5 gone. They're late back training. So, and with the championship so close, I'm not too sure about them. They'll be just aiming to hold out. Armagh, serious potential last year. We saw what they played. Unlucky against Monaghan in the championship. Have problems in defence. Monaghan, look, we write them off every year. And geez, they're just after winning the McKenna Cup. They used 32 players. They had no Conor McManus. They'll hold on. And Donegal, I'm not too sure. I have my doubts about Donegal. I just saw it last year. They weren't the same Donegal, not playing with the same tempo, not playing with the same energy. When they don't play with that high tempo energy game, they're susceptible. Weak in defence, and Michael Murphy, God forbid, they'll have to wrap them in cotton wool. Kerry are hitting the ground under Jack O'Connor. I mean, they are flying. They are training hard. They are working hard. They're tackling. They're turnovers. And they have everyone available about David Morton. So they will be trying to retain their half of their league title. Dublin will be back, so forget about that. They've used 40 players in the O'Byrne Cup. The hunger will be back. The distractions are gone. They'll be a lean, mean animal this year, a different thing. Kildare, great dream team. Look back to what Kieran says, and you just have to say, we always know that they have potential and they have athleticism and physicality, some great forward play. And you just wonder, what are their ambitions going to be for the year ahead? Because certainly, there's no doubt about it, Dublin were vulnerable last year. And Kildare should have known they were vulnerable. Yet when it came to the Leinster final, they were so conservative. And Mayo, look, we never write off Mayo, but it was sort of last year for Mayo was 1 step forward and 2 steps back. I think that was their best chance last year of ever winning an All Ireland. I really thought was they blew it. And I think the hangover from that, I'm not too sure. But I never write them off. But it's Kerry Dublin for the league title, and I think Kildare and possibly Donegal to be relegated.
Mikey,
I wouldn't put money on it.
Mikey, just on Kerry though, I do think Kerry are I was looking there because I was kind of curious, just even to go back again to what we were saying about the McGrath Cup. I mean, the teams he's picking. Now, look, we've kind of always known he's a tough love coach. Like he's not exactly the kind of coach, that, or the kind of manager that will be coming up with the flowery language that we referenced earlier on. But in 2004, when he took over at first, Kerry won the league, and in 2009, when he came back for his second stint,
won the league.
Kerry won the league, and in both years they obviously went on to win the All Ireland as well. He's the kind of manager that just goes to try and win absolutely everything. And I'd imagine it's going to be pretty much the same this time round. There was two things that stuck out for me with them, though. Number one is they are going to be under savage pressure. They're favourites already for pretty much everything. So that's a pressure that these players, when applied in the past, have shown that they have wilted under, and they have blown a couple of All-Irelands, to be fair. The 2019 one, particularly when they had Dublin down to 14 men, missed a penalty, and they couldn't seal the deal. The other thing that I thought was very peculiar, which in one sense, I'd be very interested in Pat's take on this. The fact that they're bringing Paddy Tally all the ways down from Tyrone or wherever he's living. Now, look, they obviously had issues at the back in a defensive sense, and maybe that's what he's brought in to do. But for Kerry to admit, no, I know they've had outsiders in before, but for them to actually bring an Ulster outsider, I thought was most peculiar.
I thought it was a brilliant idea. I welcome it. And, you know, I was talking about it, I think, the night of the Kerry County semi-final, and I referenced Paddy's famous speech to Westmeath, you know, that it takes just a grain of sand to tip the balance. And I genuinely believe maybe Paddy Tally could be that grain of sand, because it's a realisation that we don't have a defensive coach in Kerry. It's a realisation that the defensive coaching setups of the Ulster teams and Dublin are much better than us. We need to work on our defensive approach. We need to work on our defensive play, and bringing Tally in, I think I think it's a masterstroke. I think it's be welcome. And I think you're right, Jack is ruthless, but I think he's mellowed a little bit. I think he's inclined to listen. The fact that he brought in Paddy Tally, when Jack was in charge before, it was Jack show or no show. This time, bringing in Paddy Tally, and he has a couple of good guys, Mike Quirk, Diarmuid Murphy, he has good guys surrounding him. So, look, it all goes well, but it goes back to the big time. Look, that when it comes to the big days, when it comes the All-Ireland finals or the All-Ireland semi-finals against the big guns from Dublin or Tyrone, we have failed, and it's 2014 since we won the All-Ireland, and we're not guaranteed. And it's about, look, the big question, we have talented footballers, but at what stage do you say to yourself, okay, lads, we have loads of talented footballers, we have a conveyor belt, but talented footballers have to deliver All-Irelands, and they want to be starting delivering.
Mikey, I think it's important that we mark that moment with Pat and his compliments there, Paddy Tally, because we all know if Kerry do fail,
Paddy Tally is getting in the neck.
Correct.
Yeah, he has to build them up first. Wheelo, that Pat.
Yeah, correct.
Pat is talking about a conveyor belt there. It brings me on to the one thing I wanted to ask you about Dublin, because there's a lot we could say about Dublin, obviously, but one thing that strikes me is since Conor O'Callaghan is probably the last one, the guy coming from minor and under 20, under 21, who's recognised as a generational talent, as this guy is going to play for Dublin for the next 10, 12 years, and he's going to be a star. Now, Conor O'Callaghan's not old, but it's a few seasons ago now, and I was one of the many people who said, look, this isn't a generational thing, Dublin. This is, this is a machine that's going to churn out all Ireland's. It is a little bit interesting that I haven't heard the buzz about this Dublin underage star in a few years.
Yeah, and Mikey, 2-3 years ago when you challenged that, we were lashed, as Dubs would be lashed out of it, saying this going to go on and on and on. Like underage structures in Dublin do need to improve. I'll be very honest about that. And
club championship in Dublin was poor this year, wasn't it?
I don't.
It was poor everywhere, Rory.
That's true.
I don't think there's another Conor O'Callaghan coming through, from being honest with you. And I think, yes, Dublin will be reinvigorated, no doubt about it, after last year's championship. But I do think the next few weeks are hugely important from a Dublin perspective. I think it's a big, big league campaign for them, because Kerry are buzzing. Like Armagh come to town on Saturday night. Armagh will come, they're going to bring a massive crowd to Croke Park.
Yep.
They're a damn bloody good side and upper curve with great forward lines. It will cause Dublin plenty of problems. Yes, they might still be a little bit open at the back, but I think they're going to get a right test on Saturday night. I know they looked at 40 players over the last Upper and Cup, but there was still some small concerns there in terms of some of the stuff we saw last year. There's a reluctance to kick the ball. They've been caught in the tackle a few bits, dropping balls short. There's still big reliance on Fenton, Kilkenny, Scully's, O'Callaghan. So there's a cohort of players now there where they're usually reliable on, and maybe the backup that was there in previous years is not there. So Yeah, I think it's important. Desi Farrell, like Lee Gannon, has been very good the last few weeks. You know, in the defence, he looks like somebody has potential. Tom Lahiff has done reasonably well. He played right half back for Jude. Might suit him a little bit better coming onto the ball. Where will he play Sean Bugler? We try Sean Bugler maybe coming from deep as well. Do they need those deep runners coming breaking the gain line? Ross McGarry's done reasonably well. So there's been a few lads that have kind of put their hand up, but I really think the next few weeks are going to tell about Dublin and where they're at. Tralee, if there's any hangover effects from last year.
Yeah.
Tralee Saturday week is a big one for both counties to lay down a mark.
Okay. I'm going to say that Kerry are going to win the league because, as you said, Jack Connor is a good strike rate, and I think Monaghan are finally going to go down despite Rory Beggan's refusal to take a week off. I saw some astonishing stat. Rory Beggan hasn't missed a game in about 8 years. He even played in every McKenna Cup game. I don't know whose number 2 is, but it's a thankless task. I'm going to say Monaghan are going to go down with Kildare, I'm afraid. Wheelo, you're champs and you're going down.
Kerry are going to win it at a canter.
Thanks to Paddy Talley.
Thanks to Paddy Talley. He's going to put a super defensive structure in there and they're going to win it at a canter. Going down, you know, I think Monaghan always perform above their expectation. I'd be concerned, you know, there's a lot of those inter-games, Ulster games are going to be hugely important. I think Donegal, you know, very much need to get early momentum. And they could struggle and find themselves in a battle in relegation. And I think Kildare is going to be, it's a huge step up for them. Again, they're going to need to get a couple of early wins to get momentum. And the other thing, like I know we only touched on Mayo briefly, Mikey, but Mayo's league form can be very, very patchy. And I don't think James Horn invests as much importance into the league. And, you know, they might just struggle to get back on track after the fallout from the All-Ireland last year. They could find themselves fighting in those last couple of games to stay up, but Kerry to win it and those three to fight it out.
We had got Pat's already, so yours, Rory?
Yeah, Kerry will win it, and I think they will actually win it comfortably enough. And I think going down, I agree with Pat and Wheelo. I think, like, you see, there's a mini Ulster League going on as well, again, within this league, and I do actually think Donegal will struggle. And I think Donegal may be the ones for the drop zone with Kildare. Okay.
We'll have to speed through the other two divisions, unfortunately, and we will take a proper look at them this year when it is the right thing to do and when it's newsworthy. And obviously Division 3 is, for the opposite reasons for Division 2, is of interest because there's two teams going up here and who would be in Sam Maguire, and I think it's very interesting. Westmeath are seen as about the strongest team there, having come down. Antrim are seen as quite strong, having come up, and they're impressing, and their form line seems good. Longford, Billy O'Loughlin has said is league or bust for him anyway, so he's set his stall out. Laois were awful that last year, but they're under new management now in Billy Sheehan, and they did well in the O'Byrne Cup. Wicklow are the only team in this division I've seen live this year, and all I can say is that they have one very, 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 very good full forward in Kevin Quinn of Blessington. He was very impressive. I'd see them play Wexford.
And by the way, Shawnee Furlong retired today.
Yeah.
Yes.
Long career.
Yeah. So there's and then you've got Louth, who, obviously a very wily manager who's very quietly going about his business there. So Pat, it's an interesting division, and you could argue it's the most open of the lot.
Oh, because like I said, we're talking about Division 2, where the losers, if they don't get into the provincial final, go down to the Tailteann Cup. Here is the big carrot for the winners here of for the two top teams in Division 3 is that they're going to play for the last 16 for Sam Maguire. I fancy number one, Westmeath, no doubt about it. I thought they were very unlucky last year. I was really impressed by them. In their first 3 league games, they didn't concede a goal. 2 of the games, they were beaten by a point by Down and Meath. They played in the relegation battle against Cork. They were brilliant in Parky Keane for 50 minutes. The better side. Until Ray Connellan got injured. They were the better side. I thought they had huge potential. I fancy Westmeath to go up. And I know I was very impressed by Antrim last year. They were impressive in the McKenna Cup. And I know they've been doing the Challenge Cups row, and they've been very impressive. Enda McGinley is a good manager. He's a full strength panel available. So I fancy Westmeath and Antrim to be promoted. And I think Wicklow won't get away with it. They got one win last year that avoided relegation. And I think Limerick have plateaued. Some of the players are gone from the panel. I watched them play against Kerry. I watched them play against Tipperary, albeit they were a bit understrength, but they look poor. So I've Westmeath and Antrim to get promoted, Wicklow and Limerick to get relegated.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say about Westmeath as well, I felt Westmeath were very unlucky to be relegated in the first place. If it was a 7-game league last year, 7 rounds of the league, Westmeath wouldn't be in Division 3. I'd be convinced of that. They were split into this Division 2 North, Mayo, Meath, and Down. Which was tough enough. And they so they'll come. I think they'll come storming out of that. And I'd give a shout out to Fermanagh. I think Fermanagh will have a chance there as well. You know, I actually think Fermanagh may, you know, look, they've kind of flittered up and down. New management again. Ricey's gone, but look, I don't know what who goes up with them. We haven't a clue.
It won't be Fermanagh, I don't think.
Wheelo, do you want to stick a pin in the dartboard here?
Well, I'm sorry, Mikey, but I do think it might be a step beyond Wicklow, so I'm sorry for saying that. But I think they might go down. I agree, Westmeath. I agree what the lad said. Very unlucky last year. Lost some games very narrowly. For me, then, it probably, I don't know whether another jump for Antrim might be beyond them. You know, maybe Laois. I think Laois might be a team that will have a bit of bite to them. Maybe watching them last weekend, they certainly looked to have a bit of structure and knew how they wanted to play. And so I'd maybe give them the edge ahead of Antrim going.
Okay. Just, you know, Billy Sheen in there as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
I haven't gone full native here. I don't think Wicklow are going to get to be promoted, by the way. I've only lived here 2 years. Give me a bit more time to be blindly optimistic. I am going to say Westmeath. You know, I'm going to throw Louth's hat in the ring there. I just think they're very quiet, and I think going down will be Fermanagh and Limerick. There you go. Quickly, Division 4, very, very briefly. Who do we think has a chance of coming out of here? The way I see it is, you've got teams who at this stage have to be described as languishing. They would include my own Wexford, Sligo, Leitrim, London, and even Port Carlow, who used to be rising. Now they're languishing. Then you look at Tipperary and Cavan and say, Waterford as well. Then you look at Tipperary and Cavan and say they have to be looking at a very quick bounce out of here. Does anybody think it's not Tipperary?
Yeah,
and
the
Cavan?
two teams down. The two teams that will come out of this league are two teams that shouldn't be down there in the first place, I would argue, which is Cavan and Tipperary. You know,
that's anyone disagree?
I think Cavan certainly will come back up. They have to. I think they're good enough. Ryan McMahon's gone in there. I think they're too proud to be down there. They'll definitely get out. But I think Tipperary will be challenged maybe by Wexford or
Whelan.
Could be a challenge there.
Yeah, I would agree with Ciaran. I think Cavan, look, a team to be relegated to Division 4 with 3 All-Stars on the team, that shouldn't be. So, you know, it was a hangover from the previous year. So Cavan are racing certainties. I'm not too sure. I agree with Ciaran. I'm not too sure about Tipperary. They're missing
Sligo, Pat. Sligo.
So I'll just tell about Tipperary. I mean, 4 of the forward line that started against Kerry in last year's championship are gone. And also Colin Reardon from the previous year is gone. So they're missing a lot of players. I watched them against Kerry in the McGrath Cup. They were poor. And I don't think Tipperary are the guaranteed. I think Shane Roach is doing a good job with Wexford. He came in, he replaced Paul Gallivan. Last year, he was starting to develop them. They did very well against Dublin in that Leinster Championship. And as an outside bet, Wexford to come in. I'm not too sure about Sligo. I haven't seen them play yet. I'll let you know in a couple of months.
Well, I think that's a fantastic note to leave on. I got the 2 esteemed football experts on the podcast are saying Wexford for promotion, cast iron guarantees, and they don't even have Paddy Talley in their backroom team. All right. Lads, thank you very much. That was an enjoyable breeze through. I think we righted.
And we might be wrong now. We might be wrong.
I know, Pat. You're never wrong, Pat. Never wrong.
What is it, Declan Ernie again? If I knew then what I know now, I'd be a wiser man. So I ended that note.
He also said, "Stop the world and let me off, Pat."
Yeah. Or Marky and Drumleach, but we won't go there.
All right. Thank you to Rory. Thank you to Pat. Thank you to Wheelo. As always, there'll be comprehensive coverage across the RTÉ platforms, Saturday and Sunday Sport on Radio 1. The Dubs and Armagh are live on RTÉ television on Saturday night, and the website will have live blogs, reports, reaction and anything else you could possibly want. So that's where you want to be going. All right, we will chat to the lads again. Thank you very much. Chat to you later.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.
From this, how much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar.